Good morning, good evening, and good night, everybody. My name is Sarah, and I cracked. I finally did it. I'm doing the tier ranking books video. I have seen so many people do this, and I was like, I haven't read enough books to like do a proper tier ranking. And then and now I'm here. And so, yeah. You guys have probably seen this type of video a million times already, but I'll just break it down for you once again. I have a tier ranking list where basically I have a bunch of books I have read, and I'm going to talk about them and where exactly they rank in my opinion. I've only picked out books that I've completed the series or their standalones. Now, I had to add in some standalones because I haven't actually completed that many series. It's a lot of effort for me to complete a series because I'm like, if I'm not enjoying it all the way through, I'm not going to finish it. So yeah, we can hope some of these are pretty decent, and I'm going to explain once we get over to what exactly my tier ranks are. So you can see I have iconic, love, cool, I did it, and why. That is the way I rank things. Iconic is something that's like, of course I read it, it's wonderful, it's amazing, this is an icon. Love it, it's like, it's so great and amazing, it has its flaws, but you know, I don't really talk about the flaws too much because of how much I love this. Cool is like, yes, yay. That it was a good series. I did it is I completed it, but that was energy, and why did I waste my energy? So, as you can see down here, I have like a decent number of books, not too many. I didn't want this video to be hugely long, and also I was limited on the amount of books I could pick. I think I got a good variety, but we'll see as I rank these. So obviously we're going to start off with the first book I have down here, and that is Magnus Chase. Now, I love Magnus Chase with my full heart. I'm currently rereading Magnus Chase. It is so amazing. Actually, I finished my reread, but it's so amazing and so wonderful, and it's one of my favorite Rick Riordan series out there, and how can I not love it? And so, of course, it's going into iconic because I will not shut up about it. Next up, we have Fangirl. Now, this is the book series that inspired Carry On. I didn't add Carry On to the list because book 3 is coming out soon, or eventually. I just know there's a book 3 coming out, and so I didn't want to include it on the list. However, I did include the standalone that inspired it, and I'm just like, it was fine. It was okay. I did it, but like, see, I'm stuck between cool and I did it, because I did enjoy the book. I really did. But also, it was a little bit of a hot mess, so I don't know. We're gonna put it tentatively in cool, because I didn't feel like I wasted energy on it, but we'll see. We'll see what else I put in there, and if it ranks below those. Next up, we have Crazy Rich Asian, which is a series that I feel like it shifted dramatically from book 1 to book 3, and I enjoyed book 3 way more than I did book 1. But at the same time, you know, no, I liked the third book. I liked the third book. So I'm gonna say cool. It's not love, but it's a series worth reading, and it's a series worth recommending, which I feel like is at least anything cool and above is I'm recommending it. Anything I did it and why, not so much. Okay, so next up we have Six of Crows, and obviously it's going in iconic. I am a sucker for any books with criminals and magic, and like a crew of criminals specifically that deal with magic. And Six of Crows and Crooked Kingdom are such great books because it deals with a band of criminals as they're forced to do the impossible, and it's so cool, and I love it so much. And you've probably heard me talk about it a million times, and a million other people talk about it, but it's iconic, it really is. Next up, we have The Relic Master, which is a standalone that I'm just like, what are my opinions on it? I don't actually remember too much about it, because it was fine. It's all about, there was this trend going on a couple hundred years ago. It's like, what if we bring back relics from the Holy Land? And it was this whole thing about the Catholic Church where if you visit these relics, you don't have to spend too much time in purgatory or whatever. I'm not Catholic, I don't really understand purgatory, but the whole idea of this guy being forced to fake a relic in order to appease the person who is paying him, and then he had to face the punishment for it. I'm like, I don't really remember it, so I felt like I wasted energy. I wouldn't recommend it to anyone. It was an interesting read, but why did I read it? Because I don't remember it. So it's going in why, just because I'm like, why? Okay, so next up we have Every Heart a Doorway, and obviously I like this series. I have gone through all of the books in this series, however, book 1 really dragged it down for me, because book 1 is supposed to talk about this amazing, school for children who have gone through doorway fantasies, and then it was all about a murder mystery plot, and I'm like, these two things aren't connected in any way. And so, as much as I love this series, it is not going in iconic, it's simply going in love, because the two best books in this series are when we're not focusing on the school, which was the whole point of book 1, is setting up the school. And I'm like, I just, It was fine, book one. It got me to read all the others, which is great, but like book one really drags this down for me. So it's going in love. If we only talked about Come Tumbling Down and Down Among the Six Bones, it would be iconic. But we're talking about all the books here. And so I don't think it's good enough consistently to go into iconic. Does that make sense? It's staying in love. It was still a great book, but it's staying in love. Ooh, next up we have Renegades. So this was one of my friend's favorite series, and she demanded I read it. And I loved the first book. However, I don't like how it ended. I felt like it was way too clean of an ending for the amount of drama and conspiracy that we were setting up. And it just kind of like, the people who they set us up to hate just kind of were forgiven at the end. And I'm like really upset about that. So it's going in cool. Because I loved the first book, but everything else kind of was like mediocre for me. And so it's the exact opposite problem of Every Heard a Doorway. It's like fine. It's okay. That's about it. Ooh, next up we have Gentleman's Guide to Vice and Virtue. So, why is my mouse going down? That's weird. So, I enjoyed this series. However, the more I think about it, the more I hate the way they portray alchemy in this book, because it's all supposed to be about this guy going on like this trip across Europe to like, it's his grand hurrah before he has to take over his father's state. And then suddenly there's like alchemy and that's like bordering on magic involved, and like, I'm sorry, alchemy is not magic. If you're gonna call it magic, then call it magic. But they wanted it to be set in our world, so they called it alchemy, and I'm like, no. I read the series, and it's fine, but I did it level fine. I read this book because the first book was about a queer relationship and the second book was about an asexual main character. That was the draw for me. And while I'm amazed that there was an asexual book out there of this, like, well, it was well talked about, like, people enjoyed this book, that was the only reason why I read it. If I knew what this book was and it didn't have that representation, I probably wouldn't have read it. I enjoyed it. It has a lot of issues, however, and if it wasn't for the representation, I probably wouldn't have enjoyed it as much as I did, which is always a problem because you shouldn't just be reading something because it's like, hey, I can find myself in this. You should read it because it's a good book, and you should be able to find yourself in good books. So I did it. That's my stance on that. I did it. Talking about asexual books, Daughter of a Burning City has an asexual character in it, and that was the only reason I picked this book up. And then I found out it was like, it was a magic circus, and I'm like, okay, you have me intrigued. I'm going to pick this book up because it's asexual and a magic circus. However, I hated this book. Once again, it was a murder mystery, so it is going in why. It is a standalone. I did not like it. And it's the way it, I have an issue with the asexual character specifically, is not cool. Is not cool. And it's in why, because I wasted my energy on it. I did not enjoy it. I have entire rants I can go about these books, but I don't have time for that. It's going in why. It's going in why. Next up we have Carry On. Stop scrolling down without me. So this is, once again, I thought I said I wasn't going to rank this book because I haven't read book 3, but I guess I put it in here anyways. So I'm just going to have to judge it off the first 2 books alone. So, book 1 was written as a standalone, and then book 2 came out just because, like, the author had more to say. And I did not like book 2. So, it's kind of stuck in that same place as Fangirl is because I liked it, but it was like, book 2. I did not like book 2. I'm going to put it in cool on a tentative note. It's cool if it's a standalone, but it's not. Okay, as a series, I did it, but as a standalone, it's cool. Does that make sense? We're going to ignore that paradox because I don't want to deal with it. Next up, we're talking about Reflections. This is a Twisted Tales of Mulan. What if instead of Mulan's identity being revealed, Shin got injured and Mulan had to go into the underworld to save her general? And you know what? I really liked this book. I'm going to put it in love because legitimately it was the story of Mulan going to the underworld and having to hide her identity in the underworld and meeting all her ancestors, and they're like, oh, your dad doesn't have a son, and she has to convince her ancestors, like, no, I have to hide my identity down here, and they have to be, like, really careful, and, like, they're traditional, and they're like, we can't really, like, do that, but they do, and I loved this standalone. This is the only Twisted Tales book that I have legitimately loved. And so yes, I'm putting it there because I want to reread that soon. I'm a sucker for any book that deals with the underworld, but I really want to reread that. Okay, next up, Shadow of the Fox. I don't know. Should I put this in iconic or love? I'm thinking about the full series. Like, I have to think about the full series here. The first book was amazing, iconic, I loved it so much. And the second book was like, it did a little backtracking. It had its own subplot that I felt like took over. But, you know what, no, we're gonna put it in iconic. Because that ending, the ending was rushed. However, the way it was set up through book 1 and 2 and the way it paid off and the consequences in it, it was iconic. It really was. And not enough people talk about Charlie the Fox, so I feel like that alone is making me like put it in iconic. But it was really good. Okay, so next up is Daisy Jones and the Six. I have to put it in iconic. I have to put it in iconic. How do I describe this without going on an entire rant? It is a historical fiction about a 70s rock band, but it's told in a purely like interview format. You get the story from so many different points of views and so many different like dialogues, and it's like, this is the way I remember it and this is the way I remember it. It's like over time memory has decayed, and this is why people had convinced themselves of this. And the ultimate question is, why did this amazing rock band at the height of their popularity just break up in the middle of a tour? And so that is the whole question they're trying to answer there. And it's beautiful, it's amazing. It totally makes you forget that these characters aren't real. And it's iconic, it really is. Oh, okay, so next up is the Final Empire, the Mistborn trilogy. I'm gonna get hate for this, but I think it was just cool. Book 1 was amazing, but if book 1 was a standalone, it would be iconic. The other 2 books, even though they dealt with the Fallout, it dealt with very important world-building issues, and I know this branches off into a whole nother like set of trilogies, but I didn't like book 1 and 2 as much as I loved book 1. So as a trilogy as a whole, it's cool, it's fine. However, with that being said, I feel like Fangirl has to be moved down to I Did It. Stop moving up. I feel like Fangirl has to be moved down to I Did It, because it doesn't stand on the same pedestal as Carry On and Final Empire does. So Fangirl is going down a little bit just because it's like, I want to add a middle tier to this, like in between cool and I Did It, but I'm not going to. I'm not going to. All right, next up is the Night Circus. I love the Night Circus so much. It's, once again, about a magical circus, which I feel like is one of my drawing points. It's about a competition between wizards and illusionists, and they have to like fight for their lives. And the question is always, what are they fighting for? How did they get tricked into playing this game? And what is this circus doing? Because it's technically set in our world, but the entire focus is on this magical circus. And I love it so much. It's a great story. And I need to get a physical copy of that book so I can just like casually read it sometimes. It is so good. Okay, yeah, it's going in love, and I have to stop talking about it, but it's so good. Alright, and finally, Winnie the Pooh, The Complete Tales. Okay, I don't know if I should put this in love or iconic, because Winnie the Pooh is just so soft and sweet and lovely and kind, and it's like, it's my comfort story, but at the same time, it's very British, and it does not hold back on it being British. It's like, that's not wrong. I'm gonna put in iconic, because it really is just iconic. Am I happy with the way I've organized this? I feel like I am. I feel like everything is the way it is. There's definitely a big difference between I did it and why. I can't just add a line saying there's a huge gap between these two. I think I did it. I think this is the final result. I really do. I'm gonna stick with my results here. I like all these books a ton except for the bottom 2, and it's hard ranking these. But yeah, I like it. So that has been me tier ranking all the series I finished reading, with, the exception of Carry On, because I forgot there was a 3rd book coming out when I was picking out all the books for this. But, you know what, regardless, this is just my ranking. This is just my ranking. If you have your own opinions on what exactly you think the ranking should be, why I'm wrong, or why I am correct, that would be great to hear down in the comment section down below. While you're down there, don't forget to hit like and subscribe. And as always, good night, good evening, and good morning, everybody.